Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima and I'm here checking out Ace Angler. For those of you who watch the videos on this channel regularly, and by those of you I probably mean like the three of you, you might recognize this game. And you'd be right, because this is actually the localized version of a game called Fishing Spirits. Bandai Namco did it. They are well known for their Asian English releases, where they release games in places like Hong Kong and basically everywhere that isn't Japan, basically, with English localizations. But they can't actually release them like in the West due to licensing issues, so people just make do and import from there anyway. But you never know if like the copy that you own, if you bought like the Japanese version, is going to get updated. I know Gundam Breaker 3 certainly didn't, but the Switch has been a little bit different on that, where it kind of treats all regions the same. So if you download it from one region, but it sees your Switch is in the language of another region, it'll be like, oh, I'm going to play in English instead of Japanese, like this was downloaded, which is not only like a really sort of cool way to design it, but it also comes with the nice benefit that if you bought the Japanese version like I did, you actually unlock the English version just by downloading the patch and loading it straight up, which was great. It even remembered like all my save data. I didn't have to start a new game or anything, so I basically just got to go play Fishing Spirits again for a couple of hours, and I figured, you know what, why not? Let's turn it into a video again. But for those of you who didn't see the last video, I will start from the very beginning. So if you haven't figured it out by the name of the original game or this localized version, this is a fishing game. To be more specific, it is a port of a Japanese arcade fishing game where it was a big flat like screen with 4 massive fishing rods on the corners that you would physically cast out and reel in order to catch fish. They ported this home to the Nintendo Switch because of one unique feature, its Joy-Cons. And these Joy-Cons are very useful in a way that we'll get into shortly. But we have to talk about a few of the things around the main fishing game first. And the main thing is that there's 2 main modes. You've got the medal mode, which is some footage you're seeing in the background right now of me just determining what the hell I'm doing. And you've also got the adventure mode. There is also a party mode that you can play, but I'm forever alone, so I didn't actually play that. So let's talk about medal mode right now. Medal mode is the port of the arcade game. So you put some money in, it gives you what they call medals. And just before I continue, no real world microtransactions in this game. This is all in-game stuff. You don't have to pay, you don't have to do anything. It is just everything that's in the game is in the game. You don't have to pay for anything, right? So, when you start it up, you are given the medal roulette, which gives you a little bit of money that you can use to go and play the game itself. And using these medals, you pay for fishing rods, which you use to try and reel in fish. If you manage to reel in a fish, great, you get paid for it, so, which means more medals. But if you don't, you'll lose the medals that you put in for that fishing rod. This also means that you can use one of the more expensive fishing rods to try and pull in a stronger fish, but end up pulling in a weaker fish by mistake and just lose those medals. But the nice thing about it, now, if you've played arcade games before, you know that there's that sort of thing that they want to get going in you where it's like, oh, I want to put in $1 more, I want to play some more. But then, obviously you can't do that for like an empty wallet or what have you, right? This game takes a nice little approach about it. So, every half hour, you get the medal roulette, which lets you get a few extra medals. So you can just like hop straight back into the game and start fishing again. And the game's balanced in such a way that if you're doing relatively well, you'll be able to keep earning medals, but sometimes you'll just run out. But considering that you can go in with like, say, 200 medals, and then when you run out, you can come back out and the medal roulette will be ready to spin again, that means that the game is actually, it's just generous enough to give you that feeling of, I want to play more, but at the same time, you just end up, you want to play more, but at the same time, you just ran out of medals before the medal roulette came back. It's also helped out by the fact that you've got missions that you can do, whether they be catch specific fish, or catch a boss fish, or catch a boss fish with a certain rod, or just do any number of things like that, right? Just simple achievements that'll give you extra medals. And you also have daily missions that give you up to 90 medals per day, which is not that much in the grand scheme of things, but it's still a fair amount. So you do earn a fair amount of medals as you go, but it's also increased by the fact that in order to unlock extra mechanics in the game, you need to save up enough medals. So if you do it well enough in the game itself, you'll have enough medals to unlock like the next level of the arcade, whether it be a stronger fishing rod that costs more but is more likely to pull in the fish, or a fishing competition, which is like a 4-way fight between you and 3 AI, or a new level, which has a bunch of new fish to go on. It's stuff like that, right? So, you've got a reason to be saving up medals, you've got a reason to be earning as much as you can, you've got a reason to be fishing as much as you can, which is great, because it gives you a little bit extra to unlock. It's not all just there, it lets you unlock everything as you go so that you're not too confused about what all the mechanics do, and it just gives you stuff to do over a long period of time. It'll take you a fair few hours in order to unlock everything that the mode's got to offer, and there's even a little bit of extra content locked behind the adventure mode, so you do need to go and do that as well, which means that you're not going to be seeing everything that there is to see within the first hour of gameplay, which is not only great, but that means it's also one of my favorite modes, because you can sit down with it for 10 minutes or 2 hours and get a good amount of progress and fishing out of it in the same way. So this is the actual gameplay that you're seeing right now, and the way it works in the medal mode at least is that you get a few minutes of fish swimming around, and you can go to the effort of trying to catch any of them that you please. And you've also got extra events that'll come in from time to time, whether they be monster fish or fishing competitions or similar sort of things like that, you know? So you've got things along the lines of like little frenzies that'll come up every now and again. So it always keeps you it always gives you stuff to do. It doesn't linger too long on one particular thing to keep you bored. You always get swapped to a new level after a monster fish shows up, just as an example. So it's not going to keep you on the same background for 20 minutes. And while it's not like that matters, because frankly these backgrounds are freaking gorgeous, I don't know how they managed to do this. They all have like this feeling of being in 3 dimensions, but very clearly being just really well done 2D artwork. And that really fancy water effect they've got going on over the screen is really well done as well. It just looks fantastic. There's nothing wrong with the way the game looks, and it's also helped out by the fact that all of these fish are modeled in 3D, and they are all modeled really, really well in 3D. You can go to the Fish Encyclopedia, as you saw earlier in this footage, and you can actually look them all in 3D in every angle, although you don't get to see them like wiggling around or trying to swim away or anything like that, but you still get to look at them, and while it's not like, you know, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X level, they still look great. There's nothing wrong with the way the fish look in this game whatsoever. They're well textured, they're well animated, they look really nice in motion, and when they're trying to struggle away on the rod, it gives you this like really nice feeling of like it's actually trying to get away from being hooked up. There are over 200 kinds of fish in this game, and they all look great. It's all really well done. You've also got pretty good sound going on in the background, although it's not as impressive as the graphical presentation. It's also not helped out by the fact that there's this Japanese character that's like one of the main characters of the game itself, not to mention like the adventure mode and what have you, that is just constantly butting in and trying to annoy you, which is, you know, annoying, but it's not too big of a deal. Especially considering you can just turn him off in the options menu, that's fine. So you've got 2 different sets of controls you can use. The first is the actual Joy-Con motion controls, and we'll get to them shortly. Those were originally the only way you could play Fishing Spirits, but they have added in a new secondary set of controls that will allow you to play entirely via the buttons. So you move left and right with the analog stick, you press the A button to cast on a power meter, and then you just hold the A button to reel it in. But frankly, that's nowhere near as satisfying. It's the same thing as playing on, let's say Half-Life Alyx playing it on a mouse and keyboard instead of playing it in a VR headset. The game wasn't designed for it, so it's gonna seem a bit shoddy trying to just transplant it onto something else entirely. But if you play it the way it was meant to be played, it just ends up feeling way more satisfying as a result, and this game was entirely meant to be played with the Joy-Cons. So, this is how you play it on the Joy-Cons. You hold one straight up in your hand with the buttons facing towards you, and you hold the other one to its side, and you hold them together like they're an actual fishing rod, and you reel in with the right Joy-Con by moving your arm in like a cylindrical motion. And the harder you do it, the harder you reel the fish in. And there'll be times where you'll be able to yank back on the left Joy-Con in order to get that little bit extra going on. And there's a few things that you can press in order to send down a little stun down the line. That'll give you a little bit of an extra chance to catch them. But this isn't the sort of game where you can finesse every single catch. Some of them are going to get away no matter what. But still, there are ways that you can be more effective at it. They're just more subtle. You just got to play the game for a while and get used to how it all works. So, but it is. I cannot tell you how immensely satisfying it is to have one Joy-Con in one hand, one Joy-Con in the other hand, and just constantly reeling it in. It makes your arm really fucking tired, but it works so well. And even just like casting it out, because even casting it out is done using the Joy-Cons. You use the analog stick to aim, but the amount of power that it gets and the further out that it goes gets thrown out with like your little motion on the Joy-Con, and it works. It really works. It has just the right amount of sensitivity to feel like that it's been perfectly tweaked. So you throw it out in the mid amount of power, it lands in the middle. Throw it as high as you can, it'll land near the edges. A slow pull in will work very slowly, and reeling it in like a motherfucker might make you more likely to break the line, but you might be able to also get the thing in as well. Again, it depends on the fish and whether or not the game just kind of wants you to actually have this one this time, you know? And yeah, it's just, it is immensely satisfying when you've been reeling in this really tough monster of a fish for like 60 seconds. The time's about to run out, but just at the last minute, you manage to get a few electric shocks in at just the right time. You pull the thing in, and it's worth something like 3 times the medals that you threw into actually trying to capture the thing in the first place. It is immensely satisfying to pull that off, and with the right combination of like the way the fish shakes as it tries to throw off the bait, with the way that they wriggle around just in the water like that, and a few extra little things that you can get done, it is immensely satisfying on a base level, the way that they've gotten the fishing to work with these motion controls, and that feeling alone honestly makes this game worth it to me, because it's just immensely satisfying on a base level. Just that deep down instinct of doing a particular action really well, and they've balanced it in such a way as such that it is immensely satisfying when you finally catch that monster fish. I'm going to say that as many times as I need to, because man, it really is. And when they throw that big ass fish right in your face with the really well rendered, like with that really well rendered model of it that does something along the lines of like just wriggle around in the thing, and it says like, you just won 150 medals. It is really, really fun. Really fun. They even sold like a plastic fishing rod accessory for the Switch version of this game. It's completely out of stock now, because of course it is. But that just gives you an idea of the way they expected people to play this game. But considering that it's the Nintendo Joy-Cons, which were never really meant to do this sort of thing, I mean, they do have motion controls, but all the motion control games that I've played have never been particularly interesting or satisfying. This does it fantastically, and I'm going to be really disappointed when Nintendo moves off the Switch and there will be no way to port this game to the home again effectively. But yes, you do have the ability to use Thunder Zaps, which cost 1 medal each. And when you do, it will stun the fish a little bit, and if you manage to either A, time it right, or B, get the fish's stamina down enough so that you can reel it in completely, it will give you a little bit more of a chance to do it. But again, the more metals you spend on the rods in particular, the more likely you're going to be able to catch any fish in particular. So again, sometimes it can kind of feel like the game's screwing you over. Like, you can spend a good 90 medals and an entire time period trying to catch one monster bastard, but it just doesn't come through for you, which is annoying. But the rest of the game is satisfying enough that I don't really care about this anyway. And as I said before, the variety really is helped out by the fact that you've got all these different levels that come in. So you'll end up on like just a regular coral reef, then you'll end up in a gigantic blue hole, then you'll end up in a bloody Taiko no Tatsujin crossover level, where all of them are the bloody drums from those games, but they're wearing really cute costumes. And considering the fact that every single one of these different screens has a completely different selection of fish to go on, it means that the game's got a lot of variety going for it in what kinds of fish you can catch. And again, considering the amount of time it takes to unlock all the different levels and such, you'll be here for a fair few hours. It's also helped out by a really nice feature that makes sense when you think about it, but the first time you come across it, you're going to be kind of weirded out. So you might have noticed back when I was starting this mode up that it actually gave me the option to select between more than one arcade machine. Now, there's one other game that I've seen do this in the past, and that's Darius Burst Chronicle Saviors, right? In this game, it's kind of different. So they give you like 4 or 5 machines that you can pick from at any one time. And they're all usually on different levels with different amounts of like the secret level unlocking pearls. So when you go to select a machine, you can look around at where all of those machines are at, and then you can be like, oh, I'll hop into this one. But if you're not doing too well on this particular machine, you can look out and you can see, oh, that one's managed to get to a secret level. I can just pop into that one and start fishing there instead, and maybe I'll have better luck. And that's what I did for a portion of this footage. This footage will eventually fade out and get replaced with one of me playing one of the more secret and intense levels. But yeah, you can do that. It's a really nice feature if you find yourself being a little bit bored. Like, you can hop onto a machine that has a fishing competition coming up in about 3 minutes, or you can hop onto one, as I said before, that is on a bonus level of some kind, right? Very useful stuff indeed. So yeah, I actually really like this mode in particular, and I would argue that this mode is almost worth the price of admission by itself. It was for me. Like, I'm enjoying the crap out of this mode, and anytime I plan on coming and picking this game back up, it'll be going straight back in here. The only time that I won't be playing this mode is when I'm playing the adventure mode to unlock all of the extra stuff that they locked off in the adventure mode for the metal mode. It's just well balanced enough to keep me interested in coming back without feeling like a dick about it. The gameplay is really interesting, helped out by the fact that the just sheer regular usage of the Joy-Cons as the fishing rod itself is really satisfying. And I really like it. It's a really satisfying game. It's extremely well done. This is only one mode that we have to talk about though, and next we have to talk about adventure mode. Now, the adventure mode gameplay is pretty much identical to the regular gameplay in the metal mode, right? But what's different about everything around the outside is the structure. So it splits it into multiple stages that are only a couple of minutes long each, and they usually have different goals. Like, say, you'll need to catch a certain kind of fish a certain amount of times, or you'll need to catch like 200 kilo worth of fish before the other AI character does, and you can't actually see what they're doing. Or it'll be a gigantic boss monster fight, but the bosses actually work relatively differently in this game, where they have a dedicated health meter that you need to wear down over the course of a couple of minutes of trying to reel them in, and fending off their attacks using the left Joy-Con. There is a story, but considering that I started on my old save file, I didn't get to see the beginning of it, but it seems to be pretty bare bones stuff. You need money, so you're going fishing to get money. That seems to be the long and the short of it. There is also a secondary plot going on where there are these legendary fish that are hiding these pearls, which are apparently magical and will lead to some really impressive treasure. But if I'm being frank with you, I read about like 2 cutscenes worth of dialogue and then I just started ignoring it because that seems to be the way it goes with these sorts of games. The dialogue isn't terrible, the localization is fine. There's a couple of typos here and there, but it isn't as bad as I saw on something like, say, Maxi Boost On, which I just did a video on recently. But yeah, there is still 1 or 2 out of the way ones here and there, and a couple of like statements that just sound weird on the surface. But I will say that it works absolutely fine. It isn't something that I would be like too annoyed at seeing on a store shelf. Looking at you, Sword Art Online Hollow Fragment, the original release, not the RE one. I do kind of appreciate how they give you like these little factoids about fish and locations as part of the story. Just as part of the dialogue comes along, you'll see in the bottom left corner of the screen that it'll say trivia, and then it'll have the character ranting for a few lines about what the fish you're about to go for is, or what the location is that you've just arrived in is. It's kind of neat. It's a bit silly, but it's still kind of neat, at least to me personally. The fishing in this mode is kind of let down by the way it works though. You see, they've had to add RPG elements into it. Every time you finish a level, depending on your letter rank, you'll get a certain amount of materials, and these materials can be used to both upgrade and buy rods. So you upgrade rods, their stats get better, and then you have to upgrade the new rods in order to get higher base stats. So if you get 2 attached to one rod, well, it's being getting rid of anyway, goodbye. But they all feel the same anyway. The only difference between them is that they've all got a special attack that does big damage to boss monsters that gives you, like, just, that you unlock over time, and it's just different for each rod. There is also a color coding system where you press a button to show the color of every fish, and then you just pick the same color of that fish as your rod, and then you just throw it out, and the rod will be more effective if you picked the right one. That's basically the long and the short of how that system works. It's kind of boring, and considering how short all the stages are, you don't really feel like you get use out of it anyway. The rods, even the weaker ones, don't have that bad of an effect on how likely the fish are to be drawn to it. Very kid-friendly in that sense, where you don't really have to worry about figuring out the mechanics. At least not at the point I was at. I was at chapter 4. I would think that if they were going to make it any harder, they would have done it by then. But no, I was still pretty consistently getting like S ranks. And the only time I wasn't getting like S ranks, I just go and upgrade my rods and try again, and I would eventually just get S ranks. So it's not that big of a deal. It does come with a couple of nice benefits though. You get these really nice like puzzle piece jigsaw things going on that you can just fill in by doing goals in that mode, and it'll unlock more stuff in the adventure mode for you. And you've also got fishes in fish tanks, so you'll eventually just get like little side-on fish tanks where all the models like swarm in, and just, you know, you can feed them and just watch them, and it's kind of nice. It's a nice touch. It's not something I use more than once, but it's there. It's fun. It's okay for bite-sized play more than the metal mode is, personally. Although you do have to play the adventure mode through in order to unlock everything in the metal mode, which is kind of annoying, but it's okay, mainly because it's so easy. That's mainly the one thing that saves it. If it was a pain in the ass to play, I'd probably be more annoyed by it, and it would probably push my recommendation to a no. But the levels are easy, and it's even easier to get the materials you need to upgrade rods, because you'll have to beat like a boss monster in order to like get the materials for a rod. But then when you buy that rod, all the materials that you'll need to upgrade at the like level 3 or 4 are really base level materials. So it's just relatively quick to get a new rod up to speed, so that you don't have to waste time going through like old stages grinding for resources and what have you. So it's a relatively easy progression. It's still the same fun fishing, just with a bit of a shorter lifespan on it. Again, I like the metal mode a lot more, but outside of that, it's okay. I'm basically just going to play through it to unlock everything that the metal mode has to offer, then I'm probably never going to touch it again. But with all of that said though, I really do enjoy the hell out of Ace Angler, also known as Fishing Spirits, because if the Japanese copies get cheaper for whatever reason, like you get it on sale on the eShop, or you manage to buy it for like 20 bucks less off an import site or something like that, you can just update it and get the English version anyway. So that works great. It is a really fun... It's not a fishing simulator by any means. It's definitely more arcadey than an actual fishing simulator. But it's got an absolute ton of fish. It's got great variety in both the locales, the fish you can catch, and it's consistently like dropping in new events so that you don't get too bored over time. There's a lot of unlockables to get in the metal mode. There's a lot of collectibles to get in the metal mode. The adventure mode is at least relatively long, so you don't feel like you've wasted a bunch of money on a game that you can see everything you need to see in an hour. And the reeling in of the rod is satisfying at such a base level that it makes the Joy-Cons well, not so much worth it, but it's a really good example of how well they can be used if properly put to the task. Also, there's an entire like party mode that you can play with your friends, and all of metal mode is playable with 2 players. So you can try and be fishing alongside each other at the same time. You'd need 4 would you need 4 You would need 4 Joy-Cons for it, because you can't play this on the classic controller. The Pro controller, I should say, not the classic controller. You can't play this on the Pro controller. It's just the Joy-Cons in the handheld, or it's the Joy-Cons out of the handheld. But I don't think that they would let you play with one set of Joy-Cons in the handheld and one set of Joy-Cons out of the handheld. That's a good way for someone to get punched. But yeah, if you've got like a kid or something and you both like the idea of like fishing for ridiculous beasts, well, I can't recommend any other game highly enough, because this is probably the best fishing game I've ever played, and I've surprisingly played a fair few. So yeah, Fishing Spirits, highly recommended if you can get it from a usual import place, or just make a Japanese or even just like Hong Kong account maybe. I don't claim to know where the Asian English version would be on sale by default, but again, if you buy the Japanese version, you can just get the patch and get it in English just fine anyway, so it's not like it matters. But yeah, enjoyed the hell out of Ace Angler, also known as Fishing Spirits, and I wholeheartedly recommend you pick up a copy. This footage will continue for another half hour because I don't have that much else to talk about. This has been Blue Maxima, and I will see you all next time.
これからも海で会ったらよろしくね。それじゃあ私は行くね。またどこかの海で。バイバイ。
それじゃ俺たちも一旦漁港に帰るとするか。
好きな手配書を選ぶっぱ。この手配書にするっぱ。
リッシングキュー。
魚ゲット。まあこんなところかな。あともう少しっぱ。魚さんゲットキュー。すごいキュー。魚が食いついたっぱ。
よし、一匹ゲットだ。
魚と属性の相性がいいスパ。ナイススパ。攻撃級。ビリビリ攻撃スパ。お魚さんゲット級。すごい級。魚が食いついたスパ。ゲ
ゲットだ。運は僕に味方しているようだ。
ナイスリールマキスパ。ナイスリールマキ大きなスパ。イカのお魚さんゲット級。よくあいつに勝ったスパ。すごいスパ。何が出てくるか楽しみだ。好きな手配書を選ぶっぱ。この手配書にするっぱ。フィッシング級。魚と属性の相性がいいスパ。ナイススパ。元気に攻撃級。お魚ゲットスパ。すごいスパ。お魚さんと属性の相性がいい級。ナイス級。お魚ゲットスパ。すごいスパ。お魚さんと属性の相性がいい級。ナイス級。ナイスリールマキスパ。お魚ゲットスパ。すごいスパ。お魚さんと属性の相性がいい級。お魚ゲットスパ。すごいスパ。お魚さんとナイスリールマキスパ。元気に攻撃級。お魚ゲットスパ。すごいスパ。よくやったっけ。すごいっちゅ。何が出てくるか楽しみだ。好きな手配書この手配書にするっぱ。フィッシング級。3、2、1。レッツフィッシング級。魚とナイスリールマキスパ。 何が出てくるか楽しみだ。わあ、潜ってあの沈没船を。
なうんうん。そういえばオニートマキエイといえば知っていますか？実はすっごいジャンプをするんですよ。時々海面からジャンプする姿が目撃されていますが、未だになぜ彼らがジャンプするのかな。
よし、逃げられる前に。よし、好きな手配書を選ぶ。この手配書にする。3、2、1、レッツリフティングキュー。魚と属性の相性がいいパ。ナイスパ。お魚さんゲットキュー。すごいキュー。魚と属性の相性がいいパ。ナイスパ。お魚さんゲットキュー。すごいキュー。ボーナスジョッパー。テクニックゲージ回復のチャンスパ。力強く湧くパ。いけいけパ。もう少しキュー。お魚ゲットパ。すごいパ。お魚さんの属性の相性がいいキュー。ナイスキュー。あともう少しパ。お魚さんゲットキュー。すごいキュー。大物が来るパ。気をつけるパ。 きな手配書を選ぶっぱ。行きたい場所を選ぶっぱ。好きな手配書を選ぶっぱ。行きたい場所を選ぶ。何をするっぱ。
俺の作ったロット。また来いよ。
何をするっぱ。
あら帽子ありがとう。
何をするっぱ。行きたい場所を選ぶっぱ。好きな手配書を選ぶ。行きたい場所を選ぶっぱ。好きな手配書を選ぶっぱ。この手配書にするっぱ。
レッツフィッシングキュー。
3、2、1。
レッツフィッシングキュー。
ボーナスギョッパ。テクニックゲージ回復のチャンスっぱ。
お魚さんゲットキュー。すごいキュー。
魚と属性の相性がいいっぱ。ナイスっぱ。
お魚さんゲットキュー。すごいキュー。
ボーナスギョッパ。テクニックゲージ回復のチャンスっぱ。お魚ゲットっぱ。すごいっぱ。
お魚さんと属性の相性がいいキュー。ナイスキュー。
お魚ゲットっぱ。すごいっぱ。
魚が来るキュー。気をつけろキュー。
魚と属性の相性がいいっぱ。ナイスっぱ。手強いっぱ。慎重に行くっぱ。
電気攻撃キュー。
ビリビリ攻撃っぱ。
ボは一級慎重に行くっきゅ
あと10秒でボスが逃げるっぱ。
下ボは一級慎重に行くっきゅ
電気で攻撃っぱ。
動きが遅いっきゅチャンスっきゅ
ボーナスギョッパ。テクニックゲージ回復のチャンスっぱ。魚召喚の準備完了っぱ。
これっきゅ
あともう少しっぱ。
人のお魚さんゲートっきゅ
魚と属性の相性がいいっぱ。ライフか太陽イカ召喚っぱ。あともう少し負けないっぱ。
あともう少し負けないっきゅ
さすがっぱ。超大物ゲットっぱ。おめでとうっぱ。
超大物ゲットっきゅすごいっきゅ
何が出てくるか楽しみっぱ。好きな手配書を選ぶっぱ。行きたい場所を選ぶ。何をするっぱ。好きなモードを選んでね。
スリスピリッツ任天堂スイッチバージョン。
ボタンを押して始めよう。